Australia, the land of kangaroos. As national animal of Australia, the kangaroo is an obvious choice of research. However, if you're a conspiracy theorist, then perhaps you subscribe to the conspiracy theory that kangaroos are mechanical creatures which were created by the Australian and New Zealand government as a way to drive up tourism. If so, please stop. But perhaps you believe that Australia does not exist, in which case, nothing I say will be of significance to you, as it will all be fiction. But given that there is doubt around the nature of kangaroos, today I will be discussing the species Chelodina Longicollis, also known by the common name Eastern long-necked turtle. The Chelodina Longicollis is a turtle species endemic to Eastern Australia that is semi-aquatic. They typically live in slow or non-moving waters, but can be also found in streams. They're well known for their long necks and tendency to migrate over long distances in order to find resources. This species has an average length of 25 centimeters and an average weight of 602 grams. They also have an average lifespan of around 31 to 37 years and prey on aquatic invertebrates, fish, tadpoles, crustaceans, plankton, and carrions. They have a unique way of hunting prey where they lower their hyroid to create a vacuum that sucks up prey. There are currently no conservation methods in place for the Chelodina Longicollis, although they are increasingly facing more threats, as we will see later. Despite this, the Chelodina Longicollis is relatively successful compared to other species in Australia in terms of turtles. To determine the factors of success of the Chelodina Longicollis, I will cover the behavioral, physiological, and environmental factors, including those caused by humans, that have contributed or detract from the success of the turtle species Chelodina Longicollis in Eastern Australia. Let's say that right now I were to ask you to point out the most unique physiological feature of the Chelodina Longicollis. You would likely point to its long neck. While this neck is certainly unique, the turtle's morphological features are nowhere as important as to overlook factors which make the Chelodina Longicollis so successful. First, unlike other turtle species who commonly use temperature-dependent sex determination in its offspring, the Chelodina Longicollis determines the sex of offspring through sex chromosomes, XX and XY. This means that the Chelodina Longicollis sex determination is unaffected by the changing temperature. As the frequency of heat anomalies increase in Australia, which may cause an overabundance of one sex among other turtle species, the Chelodina Longicollis is unaffected. Before we can discuss the second physiological feature, it makes sense first to discuss a unique behavior of the Chelodina Longicollis, their tendency to migrate. The most important behavior that the Chelodina Longicollis exhibits is that of its migration across large distances. This allows them to change their habitats frequently based on their own needs. This commonly occurs when the wetlands or other water bodies they're living in becomes dry. This distinguishes the Chelodina Longicollis from other freshwater turtle species as they're able to migrate out of an undesirable habitat. This migration is done even when wetlands or water bodies they're living on are perfectly capable of supporting the Chelodina Longicollis and may be an ideal environment. While the constant migration may appear to be a disadvantage, as it could be harmful for a turtle to abandon a perfectly good habitat, constantly in search of a new one, the Chelodina Longicollis has developed multiple physiological traits in order to exploit this migration process. The Chelodina Longicollis has various factors which allows them to conserve water during migration and thrive after migration. For the purposes of this video, we will be discussing all of them at once, as they all contribute to the same goal. First, they have a very low rate of decision, allowing them to survive for many days without needing any water supply as they dry out very slowly. Second, they are capable of drinking pooled water while terrestrial to replenish their water supplies during a migration. Third, they're able to exploit temporary water holes and water bodies such as puddles and ponds after rainfall. These ephemeral water bodies are not utilized by any other competitor species and thus are full of resources such as plankton and nectins that they can feed on during their migration. This allows the Chelodina Longicollis to fill an ecological niche that no other species is able to, eliminating any competition for the large duration of the Chelodina Longicollis' lifespan. Fourth, the Chelodina Longicollis is able to absorb water through its cloaca to passively maintain its water supply. Lastly, they're able to adjust the contents of their urine in order to preserve water during migrations. These physiological features of the Chelodina Longicollis have made it so successful at migration that it can last up to 480 days without returning to a permanent water body. This has made the Chelodina Longicollis so competitive among other turtle species that they're often the only turtle species in their immediate environment. This migration also has breeding implications as well, which leads to the second behavioral advantage of the Chelodina Longicollis. The Chelodina Longicollis also implements polygynandrous breeding, where multiple males and females breed with one each other freely. During mating seasons from September to October, migrations of males increase in order to increase the potential number of matings. Females also migrate greater distances during their nesting seasons from late spring to early summer in order to find an ideal nesting site. The polygynandrous breeding means that these turtles are able to reproduce efficiently during migration, making use of every opportunity for a new clutch of eggs. The Chelodina Longicollis becomes sexually mature from the age of 7 to 8 years old in males and sexually mature from the age of 11 to 12 years old in females. Given their average lifespan of 31 to 37 years, this means that they can reproduce for 23 to 30 years in males and 19 to 26 years in females, giving them a long reproductive period in their lifespan. These behavioral and physiological advantages have made the Chelodina Longicollis an incredibly successful species, with an adult survivorship of 95 to 98%, except in the case of prolonged droughts in dry wetlands, with an adult survivorship of 55%. However, this does not mean the Chelodina Longicollis is unaffected by various environmental factors which harm the success of the Chelodina Longicollis. To begin a discussion of the environmental factors that impact the survival of the Chelodina Longicollis, we must first travel back to over 150 years ago when the species Vulpes vulpes was introduced to Australia. This introduction has made it a concerning predator of the Chelodina Longicollis, usually through the form of egg nest predation. Since the 1980s, studies have suggested that over 90% of Chelodina Longicollis nests were destroyed by Vulpes vulpes, and a 2018 study have found that 95% of Chelodina Longicollis nests are destroyed in the southwestern Australia region by invasive foxes, making it the primary predator of the Chelodina Longicollis. A more recent study, however, in 2022, found that only around 70 to 76% of nests were being destroyed in southern Australia, making the Vulpes vulpes a substitute for other predators in the region. Other predators have similar rates of nest predation in other regions where the Chelodina Longicollis reside. While the impact of the foxes may require further examination to be certified, it is clear they are a destructive force in the ecosystems which they have invaded upon. In an effort to counteract the perverse effects that the foxes have inflicted upon the local ecosystem, barriers have often been placed up to keep foxes out of said ecosystems. Yet these very barriers meant to protect the Chelodina Longicollis and other species have also become a concern, especially for the Chelodina Longicollis. To discuss this, it is first important to establish the impact of climate change on the Chelodina Longicollis. When it comes to environmental factors, the most impactful one is that of droughts. As previously mentioned, when prolonged droughts occur, the adult survivorship decreases drastically in dry regions from 95% to 55%. While droughts have always occurred, it is now occurring far more frequently due to the effects of reduced rainfall from climate change. Take a look at the following maps. They depict every major recorded drought that has occurred in the past. As droughts become increasingly more common in Australia due to the effects of climate change, we are seeing an increasingly greater number of droughts, particularly in the region that the Chelodina Longicollis reside. Looking at the current graphs on screen right now, it is clear to see that the places with least rainfall and the worst droughts are in the eastern region where the Chelodina Longicollis also happens to reside. The rainfall continues to reach record low rates as shown by the graphs of incrementing years, and this information is being supported by studies in said regions showing a decline of rainfall. While Australian rainfall can change drastically from natural events such as El Nino and La Nina, general trends still suggest decreasing rainfall in eastern and particularly southeastern Australia. But it is not just the increase in air temperature that is causing turtles to overheat, as turtles are ectothermic creatures. Once they control their body temperature based on their environment, they're also impacted by temperatures of the environments they live in. Specifically, a study shows that there is a strong correlation between the body temperature of the Chelodina longicollis and the water surface and water bottom temperatures. The study also found that when fasted, the body temperature of the Chelodina longicollis also shared a strong relationship with air temperature, although less impactful than that of water surface temperature. As both average air temperature and water temperature rises in Australia, the chances of increased body temperature becomes higher, leading to a greater number of overheating Chelodina longicollis. Returning to the predator prevention fences that were put in place to protect the Chelodina longicollis among other species, these gates have become a leading cause of death for the Chelodina longicollis via overheating. This is caused by the fact that the Chelodina longicollis are long-distance migrating turtles that often have trouble traveling through said predator gates. In a doctoral thesis from 2017, a researcher tracked the number of turtle deaths in a natural to urban gradient and found that by far the most common cause of death was that of these fences. Taking a look at these maps and charts, it is clear to see that the Chelodina longicollis suffers the most from these fences. This map also illustrates the deaths by road, which occur as a result of roads being made in the path of the Chelodina longicollis' migration path. However, this does not mean that the Chelodina longicollis cannot strive in urban and suburban environments. Not all is lost for the Chelodina longicollis, as urban development continues to grow. Studies have shown that the suburban environment may act as a form of protection against increasingly harsh conditions, as we talked about before with the climate change and the invasive predators. One study found that within suburban areas, Chelodina longicollis were 3 times as abundant and grew 5 times faster than their natural counterparts. In another study, the researchers had found that the suburban environments did not impact the ability of the Chelodina longicollis to migrate, finding no difference between the distance traveled for suburban turtles and those on natural reserves. This difference has been attributed to the fact that both studies were done during a drought, where natural conditions would have been worse than that of suburban areas due to a lack of a consistent water source. However, another study performed a few years later, between the period of 2011 and 2014, a period of high rainfall, found that there was little difference in any category between suburban Chelodina longicollis compared to their natural counterparts. The reasoning for this is because of the relatively stable water sources in suburban areas such as man-made water sources. These more stable water sources provide the Chelodina longicollis with resources that they will have a harder time finding in the wild, increasing their growth rates and thus fitness. Studies have also suggested that use of fertilizer and its resulting runoff into the water is also making the environment more successful for the Chelodina longicollis. The suggestion being that fertilizer runoff causes dissolved oxygen levels to be lower, which eliminates competition of the Chelodina longicollis that would be otherwise living in those waters. I hope you enjoyed this analysis of the factors which contribute to and detract from the success of the Chelodina longicollis. I hope you found this research as interesting as I have, and that you will one day share or use this knowledge. Have a great day.